Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to go over episode 16 of the NieR Automata anime. And like always, there's a lot to go over in this episode. I'm going to give you more insight on A2's perspective throughout the events that played out in this episode, as well as some theories that I have about acurate in these reports. So just like always, these videos will contain spoilers from the games. And without further delay, let's talk about it. The episode opens up with them escaping from the bunker before it explodes. But then it shows some more flashbacks from episode 5 when 2B and 9S are doing missions for the resistance and heading to the shopping center. There's a conversation 9S is having where he wants 2B to call him Nines. Then it jumps to the end of episode 5 when they're talking about how no one can live alone. Then we are flashbacks of 2B and 9S's conversation at the end of episode 1 when they were back on the bunker after they activated their black boxes. But 9S doesn't remember 2B. Now while all these flashbacks are happening, you hear 2B say, "The mainstay I believed in, allies who fought with me for all this time, everything is now broken. We are the YoRHa soldiers. We exist to be broken." Now I thought this was interesting that she said this. She's talking about what she believed in, and then she's talking about how she had allies to fight with her, but now everything is broken, showing how things are going so wrong now on Earth with this battle. But what was interesting to me was when she said, "We are YoRHa soldiers. We exist to be broken." Now it seems from episode 15, 2E is aware of Project YoRHa and how the humans are extinct, but I highly doubt she knows the full story of the project and how it was designed to fail, but she's seeing it firsthand. It is broken, and now that the bunker is gone and all their allies are gone, what now? What are your guys' thoughts on what she said at the end there? Also, I could not find any real references to the text that appeared on this screen when it said morning, sunlight peeking through the trees, and then rainy ruins and cold bunker. Any thoughts on this? Something I overlooked? Or maybe it was just a simple theme of her flashbacks. Now we're back to 2B and 9S on Earth, flying in their aircraft units. They put on their stealth function and are trying to figure out what to do next. 2B says, "Let's search for survivors." And then all of a sudden more YoRHa units are flying towards them. 9S thought that they were allies, but then they start to attack 2B and 9S. 2B then takes over 9S's unit and has him take an escape route, just like in the game. And 2B begins to distract the other units. 9S of course does not stand for this, and then he hacks in. Now in the game, 2B sends 9S away and we don't see him again until after 2B lands. So if he did a hack, it was done off screen. 2B is struggling to fight off the units, and as she comes down, 9S comes in to rescue her. Then those YoRHa units pull out their black boxes and ignites them, and 2B and 9S get separated in the blast. Now the loading screen pops up, and we see some scans that are in red, which is a sign that something is going wrong. Then we hear 2B say, "Harboring emotions is prohibited," and we start to see flashbacks from various conversations between 2B and 9S. There is a conversation about how 2B seems really surly, but she's actually soft-hearted from episode 8. 2B is questioning, "Why am I overflowing with feelings?" Then we see episode 13 when 2B and 9S are on a scouting mission together, and 9S is excited to work with someone. 2B then states, "If from the very beginning we couldn't harbor these emotions," then it shows the conversation they had when 9S wants to get 2B a gift. Then we get a similar dialogue to 9S in episode 9. When Adam kidnaps 9S, he says, "You think of how much you want to blank 2B." But now we're getting a 2B version. "I have been blanking 9S." And it's left up to the imagination of the viewers on what this could say. I think the more obvious one is feelings for 9S because of the conversation. You could also say that it's killing 9S. What are your thoughts on it? 2B wakes up in the city ruins and she's missing an arm. Funny enough, my brother walked in when I was watching this and asked in that moment, why do they bleed if they're androids? And the simple answer is they're made to mimic humans. A2 explains this in the novel. She talks about how androids are made to mimic humans. In reality, their blood and tears were just some colored liquid. Now there are machine life forms that are heading straight to 2B, and this is when a pod alerts her that she's infected. In the game, 2B wakes up in the flooded city, and there are machine life forms that are surrounding 2B, and then she goes on the defensive. And just like what we just saw, pod detects the virus in 2B. I think this change on where 2B landed makes sense, based off the fact that the flooded city is pretty far away from the shopping center. Now this is an interesting twist for the anime. 9S is in the desert center. 9S asks Pod to confirm the location of 2B, and Pod does discover 2B's location. Back to 2B, she is fighting off the machine life forms, and Pod is trying to eliminate the virus. But he explains that the virus is altering and evolving its own algorithm at a high speed, and that the removal is difficult. Just like the game, you can see 2B's vision is becoming glitchy, and in my view, Pod starts a countdown. The virus contamination is at 16%, and 2B's functionalities are malfunctioning one by one. 2B says she can't go looking for 9S anymore because she has to prevent the contamination from spreading. She tells Pod to find an area with few android signals signals. Back in the desert, 9S is walking, trying to find 2B, but then a machine life form appears. No, wait, 2 of them appear. This machine is called Hegel. Now, those who have played the game will notice that this is different. Normally it is A2 that has to fight this machine, which I have a couple of theories on, and I'll come back to this. But I think it makes sense for a couple different reasons. But an interesting fact about Hegel is it's named after a German philosopher named George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Apologies if I said his name wrong. He wrote the philosophy on religion, the philosophy on history, and the history of philosophy. Pod recommends a 9S retreat, but 9S refuses and he says he's going to find 2B. Then we're going back to 2B and she's struggling to walk just like in the game. And the virus contamination rate is now up to 21%. Now it's up to 32%. You see 2B is struggling and then Pod says the contamination is now up to 45%. She sees her destination in front of her, but her vision is glitchy. Back to 9S, he's struggling fighting these units, but he's not giving up and hacks into one of the machines. And as he's taken over one of them, the machines are now fighting amongst themselves. 2B makes it to the bridge that's leading to the shopping center. The virus is up to 57%, and there is a malfunction in her FFCS circuit, which is exactly the same as in the game. Once you start to get closer to the bridge, it is the same percentage. The rate of contamination in the systems that are malfunctioning are word for word with the game. 2B then starts to have flashbacks to her memories with 9S. Just like in the game, the closer you get towards the end of the bridge, 2B all of a sudden has unusual heat generation in her central nervous system. And while the flashbacks continue of 9S, we hear the background music is the voice of return. Then in the middle of the flashback, she combusts, just like in the game. 2B says, my dear. And then Pod talks about how there is damage to the data backup system and it will be difficult to retain self-consciousness upon backup. And then 2B states that the bunker is gone. There's no point in backing up. And just like in the game, her voice sounds distorted. And then some infected YoRHa appear in front of her. Then we see the text that says, something dear to me. And then it shows a flashback of 2B strangling 9S from episode 12 and the ending of Route A and B. Then the next text says, I kept breaking it. And it's back to the same flashback, but this time 2B is crying over 9S's body. Then the next text says, my sin. All of these flashbacks she's having is hitting me a little bit heavier than what happened in the game. What are everybody else's thoughts on this? Did you like these added flashbacks, or would you have rather they just followed the game? Now we're up to the hidden reports. Report 1 says, as planned, the substitution of the singularity occurred. And then report 2 says, the handover of the observation target has been completed. Okay, so I have a theory with Accurat's second report that it's 2B's weapon, but I'll come back to that. Then we see text that says YoRHa number 2 type B. And then we hear 9S saying when he first met 2B, she felt cold. Then the next text says Miss 2B. Then he says he learned she's actually kind and she's actually pretty soft-hearted. Then we see another text that simply says 2B. 9S says it was so fun working with her, and the text 2B just keeps popping up. More and more of the 2B text keeps popping up as he's explaining that it made him happy that he worked with her. He eagerly awaited the day she would call him nines. He even said harboring emotions are prohibited. Then the text that once said YoRHa number 2 type B changed to type E and then back to type B. 9S says even then I. Then it cuts back to the desert and it looks like the Hegels are defeated. Then we jump back to 2B and she's getting attacked by the YoRHa unit, and this is a similar cut to the game. Pod tries to protect her, but he gets knocked down. Then the infected go in for the strike on 2B, but before they do, A2 comes in to save her. My favorite makes her appearance. Now normally in the game, there are way more infected units that were attacking 2B, and this is also the first time you finally get to control A2. But in the anime, there are only 2 units, and man, A2 takes them out in such a brutal way. She does not hold back. She's using her Type 40 large weapon because back in episode 7, the small Type 40 unit broke when she fought 2B, and normally in the game, she's using the small Type 40 weapon. A2's large sword almost cuts one of them in half, but the infected is stopping its full motion. You can see A2 is slightly annoyed, but this isn't going to stop her. This shows her quick decision-making skills. The infected she almost cut in half likely isn't going to get back up, so she drops her weapon because the other infected is coming in for the attack, and A2 dodges it and then jumps on top of the YoRHa unit, wrapping her legs around her head and neck, and then breaks her neck. Now from A2's perspective of this moment, A2 was used to fighting YoRHa type units. She had fended off 2B and 9S who were assigned to hunt her down a number of times, but they were certainly not a lot of opportunities to fight newer models, let alone those driven mad by a viral infection. On top of that, it was rare for her to be surrounded, so she was confused by the situation. Regardless, infected or not, large numbers or not, she had one job. She no longer had any earthbound comrades. That's why as soon as she encountered someone, she destroyed them without hesitation. That's what she's always done, except this time when she reunites with 2B. Then we get a similar scene of A2 looking back at 2B just like in the game. 2B then puts her sword into the ground and A2 walks over to her. 2B takes off her visor, saying the same thing like she said in the game. I guess this is it. And it shows her eyes are red. 2B explains that these are her memories and her sword, and asks A2 to take care of everyone and the future for her. From A2's point of view in this moment, she thought her and 2B were going to fight again, but after she wiped out the infected YoRHa, A2 didn't need to confront 2B. She sees that 2B had already been infected. When 2B states that these are her memories, A2 didn't know what she meant by that, but A2 guessed that it meant that she had no intention to fight. A2 thinks about how in the past they have fought. They fought in the Forest Kingdom and previous times before that, but now 2B is asking for a favor. Of all the people she could have picked, she picked A2, her enemy. A2 had no obligation to listen, but she couldn't refuse. In the past, A2 has killed infected comrades with her own hands, and she couldn't refuse them either. When 2B asks her favor, A2 confirms that she would. 2B's expression melted into one of wholehearted satisfaction. A2 then grabs her sword, and she sees all of 2B's memories. You see the beginning of episode 1, which is similar to the key artwork for the game. Then you meet 9S in episode 1, and it continues to show more memories from that same episode. But then we start to see her memories of also killing 9S. We see his head in the sand back in the sand temple that we saw in episode 13. Then we see she's attacking him at the shopping center. And then there's the moment when he took off his visor. And then it switches back and forth between the good memories of 2B and then the not so good memories of 2E taking out 9S. You even see when Adam kidnapped 9S. And then it goes back to another 2E mission. And then you hear A2 say, 2B, you are. Now in the novel it states when A2 grabbed her sword, as we saw in the anime, she understood what 2B meant now. This technology didn't exist when A2 was on the front lines. She had heard that they were developing weapons that would have this feature, and it was inspired by humans because they also stored memories in places other than their brains. A2 saw all things that 2B had seen, and heard all of the things that she had heard. A2 felt the pain that she felt. Her thoughts and feelings were absent, so the memories consisted of objective sensory experiences in the purest form. So A2 had no idea what she thought during these events that A2 witnessed. In the novel, at some point, A2 felt nostalgic for the name she heard, an enemy. A2 was glad to see that she was alive. Bringing A2 this news was enough for her to feel grateful to 2B. In return, A2 would grant her dying wish. Now, I hope we see this, but with Lily, obviously, in the anime. It's a small thing, but it makes more sense on why A2 did what she did. Then the episode cuts back to 9S trying to find 2B. Then Pod detects a tremor, and it says the underground soil structure is no longer stable. Pod says that their recommendation is to evacuate. 9S, of course, is not about to do that. He makes it halfway across the bridge and sees 2B, except he sees his worst fears. There's a sword going through her. He's in shock now. And 2B turns around, and we hear the sad moment.
Nights.
Now, what is interesting to see is in 2B's eyes, in the anime, you can still see a hint of red from the virus, but in the game, you don't see that at all. From A2's perspective, she's accepted it all, 2B's memories and wishes, and then 2B looked back when she heard her name, and then she grinned and died. 9S is staring in shock at what he is seeing, and then we see A2 take 2B's sword and cuts her hair. The reason A2 cut her hair was out of respect for 2B. It is explained in the novel that in this moment, I cut my hair with the sword she was impaled with, as a testament to accepting her memories and wishes. A tribute to the deceased, my doppelganger. From now on, I'll live in your image. That's the best I can do. I think in the anime, it obviously makes more sense to see A2 taking a little bit longer to cut her hair. Her hair was long, and when you watch it and think of this line from her point of view, I think there's more weight behind that. Then we see 9S beginning to break down, and we see A2 make the final cut, and this scene is similar to the game. When A2 makes that final cut and we see her final look, in my mind, I just read her voice say the final line. From now on, I'll live in your image. That's the best I can do. 9S is losing it and then begins to do that emotional, heavy scream. And I think the Japanese and English voice actor do such a great job in this moment. Granted, I know the English dub isn't out yet for this episode, but I'll definitely be rewatching this series in English when it comes out. 9S then grabs his weapon and yells A2 and says he will kill her. Just like in the game, while he does, all of a sudden there is a huge earthquake and something comes out of the ground. In the game, he's quickly knocked off and just yells fails, he will kill her. But in the anime, it's a little bit slower as he falls. He's yelling at A2 that he will kill her with his own hands, and you see 2B just lying there lifeless. Then even around A2 and 2B, more of the structures are coming out of the ground, and it forms as what we know as the tower. In the novel, it stated that A2 did notice 9S pounce at her with his sword, but he was swallowed into the fissure along with the crumbling bridge and the rubble. And then back in the episode, we see something launch from the tower, and just like the game, we get the title NieR Automata, and this whole moment, there's just silence. Then we get the title Broken Wings, which is ending W in the game, which is when at the beginning of the game, 2B is destroyed in the very first air combat mission, and the text appears, the YoRHa force was annihilated and Earth went on to become a paradise for machines. But then Pod makes an appearance, and he confirms that 2B's black box signal is offline, and the death is confirmed. Then he says that previously protocol marking A2 as the new target to observe. Now going back to the second report, so I initially thought that these reports were made by the pods communicating with each other, but I'm pretty sure these are Accord's reports, especially with some of the mention of Grade B, which apparently is a reference to Accord showing up in a different phone game called Sino Alice, I think is how you say it, which by the way, the game is no longer in service. Wish I would have known about this. But the report states that the handover of the observation target has been completed. Was that 2B's weapon? As Accord is seen throughout the NieR universe selling weapons to merchants, she has made an appearance in both NieR Replicant and NieR Automata, and 2B did state that her weapon does store her memories. Or is it Pod? He did just state that now he will be observing A2, but it kind of makes sense that it's the weapon since she is the supplier for the weapons trader, but I'm just throwing out those ideas. The pods were on a separate network from the androids. The pods did know about the entire Project YoRHa, all the way up to the disposal if I remember correctly. That first report I think is just stating how A2 has substituted for 2B, which is ultimately what happens in the game. You're basically switching main characters. Pod then says that A2 was deactivated, and then Pod reactivates her. Pod then says that A2's memory area is damaged. He then starts repairing and replaying the remaining data. Then we see a glimpse of A2 back from episode 6, and you hear her say, YoRHa Soldier Attacker number 2, confirming transfer of Captain Rights, continuing the operation with 7 remaining units. So interesting choice saying 7 remaining units. Also, it's interesting to see her say that, and in the background you see trees, which to me says that she's on the ground. In the novel and the manga, they're still flying in their aircraft units at the time that 2B takes command of the unit. Originally, there were 16 units that went down to Earth, and by the time she takes command, there's probably about maybe 6 or 7 units that are taken out by this point. So it's anyone's guess on why they decided to change it to 7 units remaining, because by my count, there should be like 9 or 10 units left. Also, going back to the Hegel making an appearance for 9S, there are a couple reasons I think this could have happened this way. One being that now that we saw this little teaser of A2's past, they're cutting out that fight in order to give us more screen time of A2's past, which I secretly hope it does. Also, it could be that A2 still has this fight with Hegel, because there were 2 of them, and now it looks like only one of them still remains, so there is that potential as well. Then we get to the puppet episode, and 9S is playing hide and go seek with the pods, and when he finds the pods, they're dressed as Mama and Carrier, which is a nice little Easter egg from NieR Reincarnation. Then 9S begins to look for 2B, and he's unable to find her, and then when the text appears, it says, 9S waited for several decades for 2B to return, but she was never seen from again. This is a reference to ending I. After you fight Adam, 2B then, instead of rescuing 9S, she leaves him behind in the copied city. And with that, that's the end of the episode. What did you guys think of this episode? Even though I knew this was going to happen, it still hit pretty hard, which is also a testament to Yoko Taro's story. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and let me know about any Easter eggs that I may have missed. But thanks everyone for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and see you guys next week.